Today is day 6 of the February 90 7-day retreat at Springwater. Not knowing right now with which of the questions that I've written down to start. I will read them all. I've done that sometimes on day 6, and many people have felt that this was interesting. We'll see what comes out of this. All our wanting and fearing comes from a sense of incompleteness. Incompleteness itself is a thought. And the thought arises, how am I to be free from this thought of incompleteness? I'm finding that when I'm watching something like the birds, I want them. I want to possess maybe one bird. What is it that in observing there's the wanting to possess? In seeing something, wanting to possess it. To live just in this moment without any idea of right or wrong, good or bad, where is the moral responsibility? Seeing sadness and sorrow, not just in myself, but around me, throughout the world. The feeling quickly arises, I have to do something about that. I have to help alleviate the suffering. But does one really understand how suffering is alleviated? And how suffering is perpetuated? I really want to find out deeply what is my purpose in life. I want to make a contribution through my life, a contribution to life through living. What is the right contribution? I feel a painful and confusing self-consciousness in almost everything I'm doing. What is that? What is meditation in daily life? Is it possible to become addicted to seeking out quietness? Sometimes I feel as though there was an opening, something wanting to open, and then there's fear. Fear of this opening and fear of the energy that manifests when there is something like an opening. What is this fear? There is another question that I have. What is this freedom of choice that we believe we all have? What is this belief based on? One may not even think it's a belief. One may feel this is a fact. It is so. I have freedom of choice. Maybe a God-given freedom to choose. And another question not written down, but it comes up all the time, is what is guilt? Guilt, which most of us carry around with us most of the time. About having done wrong, not having chosen right. And the fear of punishment, retribution, dire consequences. What is basic to all of these questions? Is there something that is fundamentally essential to all of these questions? And what comes up to the inquiring mind is the sense of self, the sense of a self-determining, self-choosing me. Free to do right or wrong. Can we enter into this inquiry into the self freshly? We have talked probably for 5 talks about it in one way or another. And not just for 5 talks, maybe for hundreds of talks. And yet, as we're sitting here together on this foggy morning, can we go into this question of what is the self freshly? Not knowing what has been said before, not humming along with the words, and therefore not listening. Putting aside for the next 40 minutes or whatever time it will take to talk, ideas one has about the self. If that's possible. If great attention is given to what is being said and listening and looking, then maybe our old ideas and memories don't need to come into play because we're listening now on this entirely, completely fresh morning, looking at something as though for the first time. What is sitting here on the stool or on the mat or on a chair is a palpable body. And we're not just using the word body and are satisfied with the concept of body, but is there feeling, sensation in what we call this body? There is the experience of breathing. There is breathing. And it's not just the word. We can say, yes, I'm breathing, and not really listen to it. But that's going on, whether we listen to it or not. Indescribable, but experienceable, feelable, listenable to. This. And there are sensations of slight pressure or whatever, where the knees are touching the stool or the mat. The hands may be touching each other, there is sensation. Or hands may be touching the cloth of the pants. The feel of the muscles. There may be some inner tension. Is there inner tension? Can one feel it? Not say I should be sitting relaxed, but if there is tension, just feel it being there. Heart is palpitating. It's all there, isn't it? There's what we call a body, which is alive, with sensations, feelings, and so forth. Is that all we are? What comes up with this question? No, I'm much more than that. What am I beyond this body? What comes up? It may take a different form for each one, but it's thought right now, isn't it? Thought and memory. idea and image of what I am, what I know I am, so knowledge is coming up. We can quickly get caught in the knowledge, in the content of the knowledge, in the image, in the memory. But that what comes up when we ask, what am I beyond this body, is thought, knowledge, memory, and image, isn't it? We may believe we have a soul, and insist it is not a belief, it is so. But right now, at this moment, can one look? Whether the soul is something as palpable as the breathing, the sensation in the knees or hands, or whether at this moment of thinking about it, it is indeed a thought. Don't take anyone's word for it, but can one find out for oneself? What it is that one is other than this body. We're not saying that's all we are. We're not saying there's more we are. We're asking, we're finding out, we're looking, we're inquiring, listening. We have multitudes of images about ourselves, don't we? Thinking back, remembering how we were as a child, partly aided by collections of photographs. That's me. We point to a photograph, maybe a group of children. This one is me. We have images about our capabilities, our education, our social class, being man or woman. Images about it. I don't talk about the fact that we are a man or a woman, but the image about it. What it means to be a woman, what it means to be a man. Images, not just one, a multitude of them. Images about being a mother or a father, a brother, sister, daughter, son. Not just the fact of that, but images about it, which add to this feeling of, this is me. Is that, can we all see that together? Most of the images, if not all of them, except one that may arise right now about being a listener or being a speaker. And even that is in the past, because at the moment of listening, there is no image. And then the image, I am listening, and either the idea of it, it may be visualized internally or not, referring to this last moment, which is already gone. These images, as we think about them, as we think about our history, the story of our life, spread through time. So the feeling and thought about me is closely intertwined with the idea of time, what I have been up till now, all my life, how I have changed, the things that have happened to me, that have changed me, for better or worse, which is thought. To think about past images is thought and time. And to think about what I will be or become in the future is also the projection of images in time, which is a thought. Can one see that? Or if it's not seen, just wonder about that. What is being talked about? Not put it aside as belief or dogma, but wonder whether this can be seen directly. That thought exists and creates in time, in the idea of time. That in listening this instant openly, there may be no time, no image, no feeling of self. Why then do we cling so tenaciously, convincedly to this idea and feeling of being a separate self, in addition to this body? A me, a self that has this body, that is in control of it, that has free choice, as others do, choice to do right or wrong. Is that what all of our training has been? Since our earliest of days? Told what is right and wrong through reward and punishment. That's how we've grown up, all of us. I don't know whether there's any exception to this in civilized, complicated society or in primitive society. To be told and made felt through reward and punishment what is right and wrong. There seems something innately in this organism, and that does not just hold for the human organism, to seek pleasure and avoid pain. It may have to do with this deep instinct for survival. What's pleasurable usually also means survival. Not always. What's painful may threaten that. But a yearning for pleasure is, or an attraction for it, a going for it, seems to be innately conditioned in us. Not just through education. It's there. Seeking out what is pleasurable, avoiding what is painful. And with the aid of this impulse, we are trained what is right and wrong, to be scolded, hit, or otherwise punished for what is not supposed to be done by us, and to be stroked or rewarded with words or whatever, candy, food, nice looks for what we are supposed to do right. So the child does not grow up seeing for himself or herself directly out of the situation what is right, but it comes through words, reward and punishment. And something may appear right just because it is rewarding to the senses, either mediated through a parent or felt directly. So the freedom we feel we have, or the me has, to choose between right and wrong is there in terms of pleasure and pain. To choose what is felt and remembered to be pleasurable, and to avoid what is felt and remembered to be painful. Is that all the freedom of choice we have? Is that so? Don't take what I say to be so. Find out. Let's examine it alone and together. This freedom that the me feels it has of choice, what is it based on? Is it based on anything but our upbringing through reward and punishment? And what becomes pleasurable in the course of our living? Maybe to renounce something becomes pleasurable in our mind. The idea of being modest or self-effacing may be a pleasurable idea. So we may become modest and self-effacing for the sake of the pleasure, the good feeling that this behavior brings. Is that so? What do we choose? On what basis do we choose? Don't we always project in the mind what will be the best thing for us? Maybe including a group with which one is identified, the family. But the identification also brings pleasure. The thought can bring pleasure, the activity, and to avoid what brings displeasure. All the while affirming that there is indeed an entity that chooses freely. Can that open up to it? Can that open up to further looking on the basis of what I choose or avoid? Because there are lots of, we've talked about this in many different talks, instantaneous reactions based on our past conditioning, our past pains and humiliations, joys and pleasures and pains, instant reaction from that in relationship with someone else, instant anger at being hurt, or wanting to avenge a hurt, a reaction to what has been done to me, the idea of me. Is that free choice when we react with anger, or withdrawal, reacting with withdrawal? Is that free choice? When we hit back verbally or directly at someone? Is that free choice? And as somebody else is doing it, is he or she choosing freely to do that? Because that's what we think. That's what we base all of our moral judgments on. That we have this ability to choose freely, which for some reason we choose not to do. We choose not to choose. And we don't look at the whole thing in depth. On what basis do we think we are choosing freely in the first place, or the other person? We have evolved a system of thought in which we are free acting agents, free choosing agents. Who can do what is right freely and avoid what is wrong freely. And we're questioning that, whether this is really so. On what are our choices based, other than what is pleasurable to me or painful and fearful, which has been conditioned through reward and punishment and other situations in our life, which were either rewarding or punishing. As long as we believe in this free choice of will, free will, in ourselves, we also believe in it in the other, and we will be forgiving or unforgiving about something somebody else does, angry at it. Why did he do this to me? She should have known better. She could have chosen to act differently if she had wanted to. And in all that, we fail to see on what basis do we act in the first place? And is that directly observable in this human mind and body, putting aside all the ideas of a self-entity that has been given free will, or that has that, and observing how we act and react? With a brain that has almost infinite capacity to create images about ourselves and the other. Convincing images of enemy and friend, and the behavior that goes toward somebody who one images as a friend, and the feelings and behavior toward somebody that one images as an enemy. Compulsion of thought and image, can that be seen directly in a mind that wonders about itself and puts aside all beliefs that it has seeken or found refuge and security in all along? If we begin to wonder about this and watch the mind, the thought coming up about what somebody did, and the immediate anger, even if it is years behind us, years ago, and the action that wants to take place, or rather reaction, the enclosure of all of that, the lack of fresh air, then one begins to understand what is happening in everyone else. The same thing goes on. The power of thought and image and memory about me and what was done to me and the other that I see in terms of what I remember about him, what he did or she did to me. But even letting alone memory about what happened, in seeing somebody now, or one person said, watching the birds, the beauty of them, the lightness, freedom of them. The thought, I want to have one. Can we realize that we watch others, people and things in terms of what we want of them most of the time? Or in terms of what we don't want of them or fear from them. Why is that so? Why do we see someone in terms of memory or what we want of him or her, or what we think this person is threatening to do to me? May or may not be true. Why? Why can't we see freely the birds, the people, the mountains? When this sense of me is there with, as one person put it throughout this retreat, this deep feeling of insufficiency, incompleteness. And any thought is incomplete. There is no complete thought. Thought is fragmented. It comes from the past, memories. Experience is laid down as memories. This is where thought issues from. The memory of myself as a child is incomplete. It's just an image. How it really was, I don't remember. I only remember the images I have, and they're incomplete. How it really was, how my mother, my brother and sister and father, how they really were, I don't know. I'd have to be there again freshly. And looking at them right now, would I see them the same way I remember them? This is just said to substantiate the fact that thought and memory is incomplete. It cannot be complete. The completeness of life is not capturable in thought or image. It's impossible. Thought is trying to do it all the time, but it can't. It's not given to that medium of thought. So, the thought of me, if one sees that to be a thought, or at least glimpses it at times to be a thought, is of necessity incomplete. So that feeling of incompleteness as I think about myself and feel about myself and live in thoughts and images with myself and others who are conditioned in the same way, that thought is incomplete, insufficient. It's not the whole thing. It's a poor abstraction from it. A minimal, fragmented abstraction from the whole, which may not even be accurate. So is it a wonder that the thought of myself brings with it inevitably feelings of incompleteness? Because in addition to thought being incomplete and thinking of myself in images incomplete, in addition to that, we grew up as very helpless infants and toddlers, incapable of surviving on our own, taking care of ourselves alone. Impossible for an infant to do that. So a tremendous dependency on whoever was taking care of us. And the way we were taken care of, maybe with not much affection, with a lot of punishment and reward, a lot of pain and frustration. All of that adds to the memory image of being incomplete, insufficient, inadequate, which probably somewhere sits at the base of our thought feelings in every human being, based on that early start and the capacity of the brain and body to hold memory, even unconsciously, not necessarily consciously accessible. And from this feeling, thought of incompleteness arise wanting and fearing. Wanting completion, wanting gratification, fulfillment, meaning, purpose, wanting. People who observe this carefully find that there not a moment goes by without some wanting or fearing. Because even if there's a moment of fulfillment, there comes wanting the more, or fearing that this moment will come to an end. Wanting to keep it, wanting to prolong it. All out of this inevitable feeling of incompletion, which lies with the idea of me as a separate entity. And then the trying to become complete. The spiritual paths, the exercises, the imposed practices, self-imposed or imposed by a discipline that one, a disciplined path that one joins, trying to become complete in time, which is thought. Do you see that? That both incompleteness and completeness, as we suffer from it or strive for it, are thought and idea. And all the trying toward that completion is a movement away from what is actually happening right now. From actually looking and inquiring what is going on right now in this mind and body and around it as perceived by this mind and body. How does it perceive? Does it perceive on the basis of this deeply ingrained sense of me, a separate me, with its wants and fears? Seeing somebody and wanting him or her to be in my image. Being like I would like him or her to be for me. he can do it or she can do it because he or she can choose to be like this to me. And if he or she is not the way I want it or image it, then he or she is choosing not to do this for me. We see all the confusion arising from all of this way of thinking. Not just confusion, but inability to relate to each other on a simple, plain, clear level. And what will bring this simple, plain, clear level into being? So that action is not a reaction to what I suffered or was trained in terms of reward and punishment, but it's in terms of what is clearly seen this moment to be so, here and there, everywhere. Which means action not in terms of the whole structure of me and you, based on image, remembered, projected, and ideas about freedom and so forth. Ideas of right and wrong, good and bad, which have been trained into us. They haven't come out of seeing, they come from training. What will bring about this plain, simple, clear level of relating, of acting? Yesterday we talked about what is intelligence. How can that come into being? If I want it, try to get a method of getting it, I'm right back where I was. Idea, striving toward the idea, coming out of a sense of incompleteness, wanting completeness, wanting intelligence. How simple can one start? This instant. To let reveal what's there. In mind and body and all around one. To notice the moment the sense of me is there, I want in terms of my desires, my images. And I don't see the other person. I don't see what's there. Can one see that? Is that possible? Can there be insight into that? The amazing and astonishing thing is that insight does happen. In spite of this massive, intricate cage that has evolved in the brain and body through history, through time. Insight into this moment as it is, and the whole scaffold that one has lived taking it for real. When that scaffold is directly seen, it crumbles. It's laughable and cryable. What this brain, with its inbuilt capacities for holding memory and creating image as though it was real, has been instrumental in bringing about. And you see, in this way of talking and describing, there is no assigning of fault. Because it's seen that the freedom of choice is not real. It's based on ingrained likes and dislikes. It's putting it simply. It's much more complex than that, but we need to put it simply, else it becomes too difficult to see. When there is a moment of clarity, it's not a freedom of choice, then one just does what needs to be done. Or doesn't do what maybe one's structured feelings push one to do, but one sees where that comes from. So I want to get back once more to the abating of the whole system of fault-finding, which we tremendously suffer from and make each other's life miserable with. Something happens, the first question that comes up habitual is, who's done it? Who did that? In order to find the culprit. Say what you're saying is enormously dangerous, and I don't know if I even want to get near to that, because it could mean that the criminal, the assassin, the rapist, what of them? They're acting on free choice. We think so. We may feel that way. He could have or she could have done otherwise. He or she knew better. Can one open that up? Open it up by wondering what goes on in the mind of someone who does something like that. Wondering about, and yet transparent to what goes on in one's own mind. When fury rises up, rage and fury about something somebody said to one. One person in the retreat said, yes, I can see bashing somebody's head down on the floor for having done such and such to me. That's an honest inquiry. And yet are we quick to close that up when it comes to somebody who has raped somebody, killed, assassin, kidnapped, mutilated? Why would we do such things if there was clarity and not the momentum of past experiences and conditioning that push us to act in ways which, at the moment, seem the right thing to do, or the pleasurable thing to do? Capacity of imagery to deceive a human being is staggering. What can be thought about another person or imaged about another person? And the reaction to that person. The whole business of propaganda, hate propaganda, is evidence for that. In Germany, when I grew up, the indoctrination started as early as possible of the children, about what Jews were and what the Aryan race was, the blonde, blue-eyed super race. What those Easterners were. East people in the east, sort of east of Germany, were swamp people. Poland, Russia, Balkanese people. The brain and the body imbibes that, learns it, and believes it. The rightness of exterminating people who are vermin, if they are seen as vermin. And then someone who acts in that system, is he or she acting out of free choice? Could he or she have known better? Some people did know better, not join this, but what prompted them to do that? Not to participate? Not immediately say these were superior people, those are inferior people, but find out what prompts the person not to go along with something that is seen as totally deluded, false, dangerous. Lethal to human life. So can this whole fault-finding mechanism of the brain and the body responding to it with its emotions, can that come under examination and questioning as we go? Whether we can be free of that and therefore much freer observe what the mind does, as observed in oneself this moment, and observed in others. Maybe we can get together and discuss. It's possible. Sometimes, if people are really interested, to put aside prejudices or be free to examine prejudices, not identify, this is me, and therefore, when my prejudice is being questioned, I'm being attacked, because this is how it operates. The me is all of its opinions and ideas and beliefs. That's part of this accumulated me. And if somebody questions my belief or criticizes it or exposes it, it's as though my body was questioned or criticized or exposed or hurt. So all of this was extension of this body. Which it is not. It's just accumulated memory, thought, idea, and the identification with that, meaning the feeling and thought, this is me, which we are questioning what that is. And whether there can be an insight into that, which is intelligent, and sees a mental, physical, ideational structure for what it is, and sees how one can live in that as though it was real. True. Right. The other person's, of course, is very likely wrong. Isn't this an enormous challenge to us? I feel that way. To question fundamentally, as all the way down to the root, what I am. This instant. And on what I base what I think I am. And examine it alone or together with a friend, in a discussion, in a meeting. So so late. It's coming to the question of what is my purpose in life? Or where is moral responsibility in this moment? If this moment is free of right and wrong. See, the free of right and wrong is the free of the idea, the trained idea of what's right and wrong. When that idea does not dominate the perception and the action, then one will not hurt someone. Not because one is a moral person, but because one sees each other as oneself, not as a self, as what we are. Alive. And what is one's purpose in life? We do have to have a job if we have no income otherwise. And what is our contribution in life? Will one think in those terms, or is there a different way of being in this moment with whatever is there? Clarifying. And in this clarifying and freedom from the structure, a newly found love, compassion, intelligence, which operates without willpower, without purpose. It just operates. Like sun coming through the fog. We will end here for today.